And then we have Anna and Brandon also in the room here.
Okay. And Rachel is with us. I have 6:58. Given that our first item on the agenda is to go into, well, after the pledge is to go into executive session, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't begin. Any objection if we start? If not, I will call this special school board meeting to order on Friday, December 18th, 2020 at 6:58 a.m. We're meeting in the Oaks Public Schools conference room and also via Zoom. We'll rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for thank you. Let's clarify that we have in the Zoom meeting, we have myself, April Herring is the host, Oaks Public School is a co-host, we have Brennan Hack, and we have our attorney, Rachel Bruner. In the conference room, we have Superintendent Steinhoff, we have board members Schmitz, Thorpe, Nagel, and Rosendahl, and we also have Mr. Beta and Mrs. Sell. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so our first item on the agenda is the consideration of a teacher grievance, and for that we are going to consult with our attorney. So I would seek I'd seek a motion for the board to enter into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session.
All right, Thorpe moves to enter into an executive session for the purpose of attorney consultation and discussing pending the civil litigation related to Katherine Heimbuch grievance and teacher contract pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 4404-19.1, 2, and 5. Is that correct, Mr. Thorpe?
Yes.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
And that was Rosendahl, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to enter into executive session for the purpose of this attorney consultation. I'd like to just let the record show there was one additional participant that joined the public meeting, and that is Greg Dobitz. Have I missed anything, April? Anything else?
Nope, you are good.
Okay.
I'll start putting everyone into the waiting room.
Yes, please. So we should vote on that motion, please. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Hearing no votes, the motion carries and we'll enter into executive session at 7:01 a.m. The items highlighted in yellow are what is recommended at this time by our administrators for us to change. Is there a motion or comments that you would like to do something different? I'm sorry, I can't hear anybody. Nobody said anything, right?
I would make the motion to change our restart plan to the maximum capacity for indoor activities.
All right, I believe that was Director Thorpe moved to change our restart plan to reflect what our administration recommends as illustrated on the plan in front of us. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Bill Schmitz?
Yep.
Okay, Schmitz seconds. All right, I would just comment, I watched on TV part of the wrestling match the other night. And so I'm assuming we issued the 279 tickets for that gym, and were they all used?
No.
No.
Okay. It looked fairly crowded to me, but there's a limited, it's particularly in a wrestling match, there's a limited amount of space in the gym that's ever viewed. Any other questions or comments? And had we issued 300 tickets then for the South Gym for the basketball game that night?
There were a lot of tickets. There were even more tickets left over for the girls' basketball game.
Okay, and just as a matter of, what was the girls' basketball game streamed on the streaming? Because I looked and I couldn't find it.
I can answer that one. I'm here. There was an issue with the NFHS service, and it sounds like it was probably nationwide, where our recording ended up stopping shortly after halftime. It was nothing with our service or our equipment. It was a server issue for them.
I couldn't find it ever at all. I thought I was trying to get on, but I never even saw the beginning of it. But anyway, technical difficulties will happen. So with regard to the restart, the change to the restart plan, are there any other questions or concerns? Any other questions? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The motion passes. What else do we need to discuss, Superintendent Steinhoff?
What I would like to discuss is just this week alone, we've had 84 students and staff that are either positive or now quarantined because of a close contact. And just this week, of those 84, 35 of those would still be with us today if both parties were wearing their mask, and I would say wearing their masks correctly. And so we're losing people, and I can say 35 of them because of not wearing masks. And I had multiple conversations with some community members yesterday, and they were good conversations. And a recurring theme was asking me, Craig, how is it possible when there is a mask mandate by the school and there's also the governor's executive order that we have to be wearing masks? How is it possible that anybody's being knocked out for not wearing masks? It's your responsibility as a school district to make sure that the mandate's being, enforced. And I had to tell them, I agree with you, and I'm sorry, I'm not enforcing it as well as I should be. We've got cases of people not wearing their masks. We also have cases of people not wearing their masks appropriately. And another piece that's challenging for me to explain is we as a district, and this came from conversations yesterday, we as a district are being viewed as sending some mixed messages, and I'll take responsibility for that too, because we have a mandate for masks and we're not enforcing it to the letter. And we also have close contact and quarantine, but we are enforcing that to the letter. And so we're sending a mixed message of we're not pushing on one side, but we're really reeling back on the other side. And I understand that's frustrating for families, and I don't have an answer. And one of our challenges here, and we've had this discussion, is if people or students or staff just adamantly say, I am not going to wear a mask, we've discussed it here and said we don't really want to have a punishment. And so we don't have something to go on if they won't do it, other than I can tell you what I've done in the lunch line with older kids is if they don't put it on, I'll stand next to them until they put it on. And it doesn't make it comfortable, for me nor that student, but that's what I've done, specifically. But we can't be everywhere all the time. So I want to make sure that you're aware of those discussions happening, and you're aware that that's, when I'm explaining to families, yes, I am sorry. We've not enforced like we should, and we have kids that can't be here because of that. And I take responsibility for that. So we need to step it up and do a better job of making sure that we're enforcing both sides of it. And if you as a board have ideas on how we could work with that or modify that, I'm open to suggestions from you.
I think we need to lighten up on our close contact.
Okay. So can you explain what you mean by lighten up on close contact?
I think we need to give the benefit of the doubt instead of always siding on, oh, it probably was. We have to knock you out, be like, all right, this is close, let's not send you home.
I can tell you that it's happening both ways. I mean, there's cases where we're looking at seating charts and thinking their kid's gonna go, it's questionable. And then when it's measured, it's found out that it's more than 6 feet and it's fine. But there also are times where it's questionable and then it's less and that's it, yes. So I can tell you that we're following it to what we're being told to do in terms of 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or more within a 24-hour period.
So of these 35, what areas are we not masking in?
I'd have to clarify for sure, but a number of them are in classrooms. I don't think we have anybody that got knocked out necessarily for the hallway, because it's really minimal that you'd have kids
Right.
in the hallway for 15 minutes,
And it's
or
not
more.
by a- it's
For this week, I don't believe it was part of FIAD, which we agreed that we don't want to have them masking while in FIAD. We also have some that went out for activities, but that number, I think, is 20.
Can I just clarify that a lot of the cases were not from our own building?
Yes, that's also.
Contacts.
So that's all, that is all I'm gonna say.
The contacts from elsewhere.
Okay. We have students that attend here and also attend another building down.
Are we actually measuring 6 feet? That was all I had. There was a student out, and then the next student not out because there's an extra foot. For Robert's, I think there's a point where you go, I'm spaced right now over 6 feet. I'm sitting like that here. I just have a hard time with that when Robert said, we're 5.5 feet. We're gonna say, oh, you're gonna get this. You're 6.5 feet, you're good. Crap. I mean, if you're spaced enough. And the 6 foot is a CDC thing. Who says 3 feet? Well, there's all kinds of different guidance out there. We're going with the strict one.
Mhm.
It's still not being mask police is tough. It's very tough. Again, we're having kids knocked out that are wearing a mask, and because the one other person that positive didn't, and you gotta go home. If that's a damn good mask, we can dock this all day long. I don't know what to do except say, do your best. I'm not gonna tell you, what to do. You want detention? Are we gonna take them home?
I can tell you, measurement is not happening for everyone, every case, every time. So here's how the process works is Dickey County Health will call the school and say, we've got a positive case. Here it is, student or staff. And then what happens is Carrie will then take that information, reach out to teachers. We have the seating charts of all the classes, but she'll take that information and call teachers and say, okay, you got a positive case, was in your classroom. And we gotta go based on what the time frame is that they tell us, which is 48 hours before the first symptom. Anyway, we'll take that information, talk to the teacher and say, okay, in your class, everybody masked, yes or no? If everybody's masked, we're good. She moves on to the next one. What's happening is the teacher will say, most are, they're not. Okay, and then are they close to this person? I think it might be less than 6 feet. In those cases, the measurement's happening, but not everyone. We wouldn't have time to do that. I mean, that's not impossible. So, and that's what's happening. And I can tell you, I'm advising Carrie, don't lie. We got to call a spade a spade. If 6 feet, 6 feet. If it's 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes. And I can't advise her to.
I'm not asking for lying. I'm saying the 6 foot thing is really difficult. 5 feet, 4 feet, there's spacing.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think we get to make those rules.
No.
We do.
And And in some classes,
But we're
we have
enforcing.
enough room, you know, they can spread out, some we just can't. You know, like Ryan, room, it's just, there's a lot of kids in there and we just can't do it.
So then how come there's classrooms where kids aren't wearing masks? That's my question. Is it because they're adamantly opposing it, or because it's just not being strictly enforced? Or I should say strictly letting asked, like, put your mask on.
I'm not in the classroom to know that. Granted, that was you. For the high school kids, some will vehemently oppose wearing it, whether that's the person who leaves from home. And the direction I asked you guys that we're gonna send kids home or suspend or detention, and there wasn't, so the direction I gave the teachers is that you have a group of kids that vehemently will not wear a mask, or will put it on and take it off, put it on, take it off, that to segregate them and put them in a spot where if they're making that choice, personal choice or from home, that they're all together, which is why if one gets it, then they're allowed. But there's all other places that we have where the kids are wearing them, but we don't have enough places to spread them out. Our classrooms are so small. In that case, that's where you're getting kids that might be knocked out. But overwhelmingly, when we started this journey to now, the majority of my kids are wearing masks, especially in the classroom. Do I still have some students that will not wear masks? Yes.
So before we enacted the mask mandate in October, we had, I don't know, 5 to 10% of students wearing masks. And now we have 50, 60, 70. And I'm specifically talking about in the high school. Do you have an estimate, Mr. Beta?
I'd say it'd be very high. Just it's a matter if you're measuring 24/7 wearing them, but in the classroom and stuff, we have significantly more kids wearing masks. Yes.
Okay.
We're handing out masks every single time for them to grab their lunch. Yes. A lot of kids do a good job because of the schedule that they're walking or sitting in the hall by themselves. They don't wear a mask when they're not next to anybody. I'm supposed to have them wear a mask sitting all by themselves. Please direct me, I'll do so. But the conversation when we started this in October was some is better than none. Well, we're way more than some. We're way more than some.
That's the difference is we've increased that, we've increased our wearing, but we're not giving kids that are wearing them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the enforcement side. And that's what we have to be less stringent on our enforcement side of the close contact.
Board members, when we enacted the mask mandate back in October, we had a discussion about rather than requiring that both parties be masked, that we put the control into the hands of each individual. And so therefore we discussed whether or not it would be acceptable that if the party that was masked could avoid quarantine. And, you know, quite honestly, I still think that idea has merit, because that puts the control of whether or not you're going to be quarantined because of being a close contact. It puts that control right into your own hands. Now, I'm going to ask some other questions. Do all of our students use hand sanitizer regularly? Do all of our students wash their hands for 20 seconds after they use the bathroom? You know, we don't know these things. The only thing we can only talk about masks because that's visible. We can see it. You know, we might be able to see that our students are, you know, some of them are using hand sanitizer at times, but but if they're diligent about wearing masks, and they're diligent about using hand sanitizer, and they're diligent about washing their hands properly, then they're protecting themselves. And I think that they should be rewarded and not punished. You mentioned something else. I think it was you, Craig, a few minutes ago about, you know, they have to be quarantined. It has to go back 48 hours before their first symptoms. Who's deciding when the first symptoms are? I mean, when I had a symptom of muscle aches one day, how do I know that was a symptom of COVID? Maybe I just slept wrong. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of ambiguity. I'd like to revisit the thought of putting the control of quarantine into each individual's hands. If you wore your mask And that's really all we can see and observe. If you're masked where you should be good.
Can I answer the question of the who's deciding when the first symptom is?
Sure.
Yeah, so the Dickey County Health, when they're calling people, including, I know this because when they called me when I had it, they're asking, and so they're going based on the patient that is tested positive to tell them when their first symptom is, and they're going on that, and then that information is then given to us from Dickey County Health to the school to say, okay, based on the first symptom, now you've got to go back 48 hours and do contact tracing from that. So
Well,
you're very right. There's ambiguity. People could not know when their first symptom, I think there's even possibility of people that have it. And if you get the fog, sometimes I wonder how you even remember what yesterday was, so I think there's a lot of ambiguity, like you said, in that of knowing whether that's what it was or if it was something else.
I'm sure that's how the teacher's gonna obviously remember who was sitting 6 feet next to each other 4 periods 2 days ago, right down to the letter.
Right, just other than sitting chart.
So they're probably erring on the side of caution, saying, oh, they don't normally wear their masks, they're probably out. We need to get the overall idea of that.
But back to, I'm with Sonia, that if you're wearing your mask, I'm not, and also this happens, but I'm not hearing. Why doesn't that mask work? This is the thing, but you're putting it back on, if the kid's wearing the mask and they're getting knocked out, but that's a health department, right? So we don't have any say, which is crap.
Well, I think
That's
that we as a school, you have the authority to say, we're not gonna do contact tracing. However, I would highly doubt that Dickey County Health is gonna say, well, we just won't do it at all. I think they would pick
I'm
it
talking
up.
about, like, if you're wearing a mask, it's happened. There's 35 kids that were wearing a mask.
Yep.
And some kid was in the same room with them. We're sending them home. That's what Robert's talking about. That's, if that kid is wearing a good mask, why are we sending them home? Because they're saying, oh, both people are. They're just trying to control the population. That's what it comes down to.
Good mask, so who's
It's a-
gonna police that? Who's gonna say
Exactly.
your
What's,
mask a good
is that
mask?
N95 versus the,
Right.
that's where people are frustrated. And that's where the calls were already this morning at 6 o'clock. And my kid was wearing a mask and they were in the same room. They weren't side by side. They were in the same room and they're getting sent home. As a school member, I said, no, if you're wearing a mask, you can stay. But I don't know if we can overrule the health department. And that's the battle.
You're right. Our guidance on choosing close contacts is based on the guidance from Dickey County Health and the state health, and it says that.
If we go against that, I'm sure it'll cause a stir.
Well, you got both have to be masked. So, the other hard part about all this is that we can't tell people who the positive case was. So they can,
We'll figure it out.
right, but it's a struggle because they can argue and say, well, I wasn't even sitting next to him. Well, they may not be thinking about the right kid because they wouldn't necessarily know. And that's a hurtful deal that we can't tell them. But it'd be better if we could, so we'd be able to,
And then if
it
you-
clears it up. But that's another area of uncertainty.
Can I chime in here too? Like, before we did the mask mandate, the kids were sent home regardless if they're close contact with mask or not mask. Then the game changed and said, well, now if you mask and both are masked, then we won't send you home. However, the result is still saying that you can still get COVID. And I think we're misunderstanding like that COVID can still spread and will still spread in school. It doesn't stop it from happening. All it changes is the fact that either you're going to go home to see if you get symptoms or you can stay in the school and have symptoms. And through this whole process, all the way from the beginning of school to now, all the kids that we have sent home for a school contact, close contact for a school, not for a home or anything like that, we've lost one kid. That's been positive out of all those kids. Now, the last little bit we've had here recently, obviously, activities of other things that are different. That's a different ballgame. But all the data that we're showing and collecting and doing and all that, you're sending kids home, or we've had one come back positive out of all those. Like the percentage is right there. That's not opinion. I have to show you the numbers. So that's another part that's very frustrating is we're sending these kids home.
And that adds to the frustration of people that are saying, why are we doing it? I mean, it does.
Because it's gonna happen. We're not gonna stop this. And that's the whole thing. The slow spread, it's got into the places we didn't want to get it. We talked about, we did not want it in the nursing home. We didn't want it there. We can't control that. And that's the whole thing. Like Zania's back now, I agree with Zania's 100% on this. If there's a young person that's wearing their mask diligently, Because they're within, someone within 4 or 5 feet and had it, oh, you gotta go home. No, they don't. I've been to no, if they're wearing a mask, stay. Eliminate them. And we might get in trouble with the health department. Yeah. It's already happening. We're not gonna stop this. We can slow it and do our best. But again, this is gonna beat this thing for 6 months. We can sit here and talk about this unless we make that decision, and I hope we can, and I do it. If your child's wearing a mask, you're good. We're not gonna close contact.
Is that a motion, or is that a workable motion that if we adopt that, can we get that into our restart plan?
I would be fine with that if my administration's good with that. If your child's wearing a mask, they are not getting sent home.
I'll second.
Okay, so Schmitz moved, and Thorpe seconded. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that we amend our restart plan. And help me out here. We're amending our restart plan to say that students who are wearing masks will not be sent home as close contacts. Is that what we're doing? We're proposing?
And are we retroactiving it, or is it from this day forward? Retro to when?
Well, we go.
Whoever is already in court, whoever's been sent home because of close contact when they were wearing a mask.
So should it read the language to state if one party is wearing a mask, no quarantine or close contact is necessary? Just one party?
The party that's wearing a mask is not subject to quarantine.
Okay.
The other party is a positive case, right? So they have to leave, right?
Well, you have a case where if somebody has it, but I'm not wearing a mask, I'd be home because I'm not wearing it, so yeah.
And I think that's the way to do it, because
But the person's wearing a mask.
granted, I'm sitting here without one, but these two both had it, so I'm not really worried about them giving it to me or me giving it to them, okay? So, but if, you know, the person wearing the mask is close contact with the person that's positive, they should be able to stay. I
Yes.
agree with that.
You notify them.
I'm
so you're not-
sitting here and Robert's got a mask, but he's positive, I still have to go out because I'm not following rules.
And it's still, if you're sick, doesn't matter. If you're
You're
sick,
not
you're
sure.
not supposed to come to school.
Exactly.
It's just trying to cut down on all these kids that are missing school for no reason whatsoever.
Okay, can I read the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. To amend the restart plan language to state if masked, whether or not if the positive case wears a mask, does not qualify to be defined as a close contact and required to be quarantined.
Sounds good to me.
Read that again, please.
Okay. To state if masked, whether or not the positive case wears a mask, this person does not qualify to be defined as a close contact and not required to be in quarantine.
The masked person.
Yep, yep.
Is that acceptable, Bill?
Yes. it is.
Bill?
Yes.
Robert? All right. Is there any other discussion?
The retroactive part, that's what I'm trying to figure out, what's gonna happen.
Well, because we have kids that got knocked out 35.
Well, we should pick a date. I mean, you can't.
Let's go, we can go today. Let's say 18th, 11th. The 13th worked too, that was kind of, wherever you want to pick, but we just know that 35 kids got knocked out, they were wearing masks. They're suffering that they shouldn't.
Right.
Let's go to Monday. It was the 13th, 14th. Monday the 14th.
But it's gonna,
Is that a good date?
I'm just here.
All days are good. You know, as long as my brother's not calling to try to bury me, days are good.
Just wondering how far back you want us to
Just like
go.
one retroactive, I'm trying to figure out how it is.
I'll figure out the kids.
Yeah.
Because we know, I guarantee you, the parents know their kids are masked and they got booted. It's pretty obvious. I think that guy knows.
Well, the parents don't know if their kids are wearing masks. the kids know if they were wearing
Yep.
masks, but the parents do not.
True, but I think we know the ones, the kids that were wearing masks. Like,
I
It's been
think,
difficult with,
I think the admin.
I think they
is the
know.
ones that are faithful
I'm
about
pretty
it,
sure they
yeah.
know.
I would like Mr. Veda's input, please.
I just got done contacting every single one of my teachers on an individual basis with all the kids that are out. All the families have been contacted, all the kids are contacted. My teachers are prepared to deliver finals remotely through a variety of means. So they're planning for these kids to not have 2 weeks back, is just what I'm saying. And you're basically working on Monday, Tuesday next week.
Yeah.
That's,
I just want you to put that in perspective, that you're not in the middle of a semester. We basically have 2 days left, because today would be out. And try to get all that communication, kids kind of going, so your decision will be your decision, but I'm just saying, you have 2 days left in the semester.
we want your, not the input, but the change is going to one person wearing a mask is fine. Because we're not only talking education, there's some athletes that are not gonna play in games because of the same situation. Athletes, the boys are done. I'd like to see them be able to play their sport, but they're the same thing, they're not being able to play tonight because they're knocked out. What do we do? I don't think they should have to miss 3 games, as I was told they could miss because they were wearing their masks.
I'm only able to hear about half of what everybody's saying, but I guess I think it's clear that if a student is allowed to be in school, then why would they not be allowed to be participating in activities?
As I said, as far as the retroactive part, I don't care. I'm gonna rely that on administration. The motion stays where this student was wearing a mask diligently, and now they're being close contact because someone wasn't. You can pick the date. I don't want that kid being quarantined. If he works to go from here forward, but these kids that got booted yesterday, that's not fair for them to be out, I don't believe.
No, I'm just trying to figure out on how to make all this work.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I need help from. Is it the good and bad? We only have 2 days of school left after today. But we do have athletic events going on.
Yeah, I mean, it will cause substantial work, like Brandon said, he's gonna contact everybody. And the 35, the number that I have is that if everyone had been wearing masks. So I don't know that 35 will be the number that will come back, because that doesn't necessarily mean that it was, it's not the same apples to apples. But for discussion purposes, I would like to read, Robert did reach out to me this week and asked me what the guidelines were, in terms of like, where does it stand for schools for contact tracing? Like, where's the requirement? And we reached out to Jennifer Schmidt, who is a field epidemiologist for the North Dakota Department of Health. And her response is this: North Dakota Department of Health can't require contact tracing. We make recommendations on what's best practice and policy. She said, I've CC'd Sarah Massey on this response, that she may be wording from DPI that it's required. And then Sarah Massey responded and said, it is not a requirement, but extremely encouraged, and is really up to the school themselves. This is where local control comes into play. School decides. I know that DPI has taken a stance on insisting public schools have a mask mandate, but I have not heard them insisting on tracing. We have not had issues with any schools not working with us, as it is a public health need. The school will need to think about the ramifications of not following the North Dakota Department of Health recommendations from parents who are on the other side of the fence, meaning if their child gets sick because the school is not following our guidance, those families could possibly take legal action. The North Dakota Department of Health cannot give legal guidance. Please let me know if I can be any further help. And that's from Sarah Massey. So that's the guidance we got on that.
Not a requirement.
Strongly recommend.
Yeah,
Strong
said,
recommend,
right,
it's not a
right.
requirement that,
She said it's not a requirement, right?
because that's my only reservation, is that if we go against the Department of Health and the county health stuff, if there's any ramifications from doing it. I support what you're saying, for sure, but I just, that's my concern, is the Department of Health gonna, I mean, maybe they can't do anything. I don't know. That's my concern, is going against that. And so that basically says it's up to us. There is no requirement. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, sure, you begin.
Yes, please.
It is not a requirement, but extremely encouraged and is really up to the school themselves. This is where local control comes into play. School decides. I know that DPI has taken a stance on insisting public schools have a mask mandate, but I have not heard of them insisting on tracing. We have not had issues with any schools not working with us, as it is a public health need. The school will need to think about the ramifications of not following the North Dakota Department of Health recommendations from parents who are on the other side of the fence. Meaning, if their child gets sick because the school is not following our guidance, those families could possibly take legal action. The North Dakota Department of Health cannot give legal guidance. Let me know if I can help any further. Service.
So on that note, I think we don't want to eliminate it completely because we certainly don't want to be sued.
But that's back to the, I think that's for, how do you know he's got it?
Well,
And then I understand, I would,
I get that,
I said
but
that's
we
the
still
whole
don't
problem,
need it.
is that's why there's that gray area, just because they named this one student in that class. You might have had it a week ago, it's tough. The contact tracing, you keep it to what we have to do, be within guidance.
For discussion purpose too, I think we should also look at page 2 of our restart plan that states how we'll determine policies and procedures. April, could you pull up the restart plan, page 2?
Yep, getting there.
I think we just, it's in our plan, so I think that's also a consideration we should have. I think that this one right here. Policies and procedures will be formed by guidelines. And again, I have empathy for you. You're sitting at this table and having to make this decision. Well, Sonia's sitting at her desk, but you're being placed in a difficult spot. We're leaning on you for guidance, and I appreciate that. I thank you for that, and I don't take it lightly, and I'm sorry that we're putting this pressure onto you.
Well, board members, I support the motion that we have on the floor to the extent that it puts the responsibility and the control of a person's destiny into their own hands. As I go out and about my day these days, I see more people in the public wearing masks, but it's not 100%. I don't think we'll ever have 100% compliance. And I believe we were told in October that 6 feet and 15 minutes is only a guide. Your exposure could be far less than that, and you could still become positive. And I'm sure the opposite is true as well. And it's all about, at the risk of adopting something that someone would say is against the science. First of all, I'd say that the science has changed. The data has changed since October when we originally made this decision. We have more data. Mr. Beta has shared what I thought was probably the case, is that most of the students that we're sending home to be quarantined because they were close contacts never do contract the virus, because it at least not back to where they can trace it back to the school. I would also say that psychology is a science too. I think sometimes when we tell people you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, especially young people or and many adults, if you tell me I can't do it, by golly, I'm going to do it. And I think if we put your control of your destiny into your own hands, I think that you're more likely, or many people would be more likely to comply. And I think that's what we want. We want people to comply and to use their best judgment to keep themselves in school. And we can't expect them to control other people. So I'd like to try this.
Well, have a motion and a second.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
One piece I'd really like to know is if it's retroactive, what's the date?
Well, how many students are in quarantine right now? And can we identify that they, those of them that are, that would not be quarantined if they had, because they were wearing a mask?
I believe the number is right around 84 that we have out right now in terms of positive and quarantine. What,
I think
Brandon?
it's closer to 64, like on the last one.
64?
Pretty close.
Okay,
That's not elementary though or anything like that. That's just my next.
okay. And the second part of the question was, can we go back and identify who actually would have had a mask on and who would be able to come back in? Yes, we can do that.
But do we need to for 2 days?
I didn't hear what Sheila said.
Do we really need to for 2 days of school?
What, we have school Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, or Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Isn't that 4 days?
You're not gonna get all of these called today. They're not coming back today.
Well, but you might be able to get some of them. Here's my thought about the language that April has in front of us. First of all, I think there are two or nots in there. So there should be only one or not. And I don't know what the implication is of effective December 14th. How long were people in quarantine? I mean, if someone was quarantined on December 10th and they had been wearing a mask, should they be able to come back today?
Where is the majority of these? There's a heck of a lot last 2 days, correct?
There's been a big chunk this week, yes. And you two have the list, do it correctly if I'm wrong. Do we have a big number before this week? I mean, in terms of,
Before this week,
This is
I had a couple.
We did quite a ways back. You know, we had spikes, so we had a lot of kids out, but
it's been this week.
this week has been a big.
Mine are families, or mine were legit, they were like lunch, right? Because they didn't have their masks on, so they got knocked out because of mask, or lunch, or in the elementary, they have to wear their masks just because we have that control. But I couldn't answer about this. None of mine would be the situation that Bill's talking about.
But, okay, so my question would be is if we go retroactive, are we putting unnecessary burden on our staff to recontact each and every one of these people again?
But by putting that burden on our staff, are we getting students back to school sooner? And is that not our goal?
It is our goal, but as Mr. Beta stated, now our staff has geared up to do their finals via Zoom and not have those kids in their classrooms. So now they got to re-gear to get them back in the classroom. Is it putting unnecessary work on our staff?
I don't know that, and I couldn't hear everything Mr. Beta was saying, so I'll defer to the judgment of others. And so, are there not some students who were going to be taking finals in person?
I have some, yeah, most of my students, I have enough students that are still here. I have some classes that have one kid, or I think I might have one that has none. And so I still have kids here, yeah. That's not the deal breaker. They're still here taking finals.
Okay, now that the language is back up, I want to suggest that we discuss or consider changing it to say, instead of using the words do not qualify, I would use the words will not be. So students or staff members that mask regularly will not be defined as a close contact. Is that more clear?
And if we don't go retroactive, it would just be in effect today because because you'll approve the amendment today, so it'll be effective after the end of this meeting.
But if the goal is to get students back to school, then why would we hold out students that were wearing a mask? If our goal is to get them back in school, I think they should be allowed to be back in school if they qualified under this guideline at the time that they were initially quarantined. Does that make sense?
I agree, our goal is to have the students in school, but I also think that sometimes we sit at this table and we forget about the work involved in doing some of that stuff.
I agree with what Sheila's saying, but the extra work is just basically gonna be the students that can come back are gonna come back. I'm guessing the teachers are still gonna have to basically do both because we're still gonna have quite a few that are out and quite a few that are in. Would that be a fair?
I've got some that are in and out, yeah. They're doing both, they've been doing both this whole time.
That part's gonna be the same.
Okay, where are we at? Is this the language that we want to vote on? So effective December 14th, 2020 effectively does make this a retroactive provision, is that correct? And as always, we would expect our staff to do the best they can. I know that when my son was identified as a close contact, I got an automated email promptly about lunches. I mean, I think some of these, yes, I know it will be work, but some of the work can be done through social media and say, you know, if your student is currently quarantined, please check with the school because those provisions may be changing, and put the onus on the families.
I think a lot of these people that have a child that was in a mask are calling. I'm guessing that's where your calls are coming from, Mr. Steinoff. The families that were masked and they're upset that they're home is the majority. Like I'm just.
Yeah, families that are, right, that we have a mask mandate, and how can we have kids go out when we're mandating masks? How can you not be, enforcing that? But yes, so.
All right, is there any further discussion?
I just want to reiterate that what this is saying is we still want people to know that if you're sick though, you're still not supposed to come to school.
Agreed. Is there any further discussion?
One last piece is, the email that I read twice said that it's not a requirement for schools to do contact tracing. It doesn't say anything about the schools having the authority to say who is not quarantined or not quarantined. So like, let's say, for example, we get done with this meeting and we call people in and Dickey County Health said, you didn't have the authority to change this. We collaborated with you and picked the quarantine date. Now, the email states that we can choose not to contact trace. I'm not sure, the email doesn't say that you have the authority to change quarantine periods. I'm just saying, and I don't know what that would mean or what that would do, but I'm not sure that we would have that authority. I also wonder, would it be possible that if we started bringing kids back in today, that Dickey County Health would then have to start the quarantine piece over, and say, oh, and then it could extend it out. I mean, if it goes that direction, I want to make sure I'm not guiding you the wrong direction on what we can and can't do.
So we do the contact tracing and then we give those names to Dickey County Health. Is that, do they know who's in quarantine, who we've put in quarantine?
I think.
What's that?
I'm not sure of that. I have to double check on that.
I don't think Dickey County Health is enforcing the quarantine. It's the school that's enforcing the quarantine, right?
Well, we're enforcing it at the door. I mean, we're telling people you gotta stay. Yeah, we're calling them and saying they gotta go home, but.
Is there any further discussion? I guess I would suggest to our administration, if the board approves this provision and you get any kickback or pushback from Dickey County Health or the DPI or the whoever, then you will have to advise the board and we will have to reconvene when necessary to address whatever the concerns are. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, April, will you please call the roll on this one?
Yes. Rosendahl,
Yes.
Schmitz,
Yes.
Thorpe,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yeah.
And President Meal votes yes.
Oh.
The motion passes 5-0. Is there any other discussion on the restart plan? That's the only item on our agenda. So we cannot add anything else, but is there anything else that we need to discuss on the restart plan? Hearing none, thank you, board members and staff, for your diligent work. And I will adjourn this meeting at 8:38 a.m.
Have a great day, everyone.